Now, how are you going to review the spending in the federal budget without reviewing the spending? And that's what Mr. Musk is doing.
Opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's...
Donald Trump says, we don't care. You go die.
Thanks to Elon Musk and Doge, they have uncovered one of the biggest fraud, waste and abuse schemes within the federal government. Remember, President Trump promised to cut wasteful spending. That's exactly what's happening here. But as a result, the Democrats don't know how to react. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel. But let's first understand exactly what's going on here before we get to the reaction of AOC and Chuck Schumer and the rest of the Democratic Party. The U.S. Agency for International Development, otherwise known as USAID, is one piece to the overall wasteful spending of the federal government. But they're getting the most attention on this because not only is the amount atrocious, but what they're spending the money on is even more atrocious. And we're going to get to that later in this video. Obviously, their funds are appropriated by Congress in the amount of $50 billion. But here's the problem. There's no oversight. There's nobody there auditing where every single dollar goes. And because President Trump made the promise to cut wasteful spending, how do you do that? You have to open the books and audit. But I want to start first with the meltdowns, because I think at this point, it's just pure entertainment value, right? The fact that it's coming from these people who no longer have any control on the Democratic Party. They are in the wilderness at this point. So let's get to Chuck Schumer and what he has to say about Elon Musk and Doge after they have exposed this corruption.
Before our very eyes, an unelected shadow government is conducting a hostile takeover of the federal government. Friday night, the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, led by billionaire Elon Musk, gained access to the Treasury Department's entire system of payments, including Social Security and Medicare benefits and Americans' tax refunds. I'll say more on this in a moment. But that was not all. This weekend, Doge staffers also executed what can only be described as an illegal seizure of the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. We don't know who these Doge staffers are. We don't know if they have security clearances. We don't know what legal authority they have to access USAID facilities, if any.
So firstly, he's scared about Elon Musk and whether or not he has the security clearances, but forgets to mention that it was Joe Biden that granted Elon Musk a top secret clearance in 2022. And secondly, President Trump has the authority to obviously delegate to Elon Musk and Doge, because it's part of the executive branch at this point, to go look up payments and figure out where every penny is going. And this level of outrage just shows you how complicit they are in this corruption. Now, here is Senator Kennedy explaining why what Elon Musk is doing is so important.
Now, President Trump ran for office saying, I'm going to review every single penny in the federal budget. Now, how are you going to review the spending in the federal budget without reviewing the spending? And that's what Mr. Musk is doing. Now, many of my Democratic colleagues and some of the tofu-eating wokarati at the USAID are screaming like they're part of a prison riot because they don't want us reviewing the spending. But that's all Mr. Musk is doing, and he's finding some pretty interesting stuff. To my friends who are upset, I would say with respect, call somebody who cares. They better get used to this. It's USAID today. It's going to be Department of Education tomorrow. And really, here's what's going on. For 4 years under President Biden, the people in charge ask one simple question. Who needs to pay more in taxes? Who needs to pay more in taxes? Well, that's not the question that the Republicans and President Trump are going to ask. Our question is, what the hell happened to the money? And that's all that's going on.
Yeah, so the only question that really matters now is, what have they been spending the money on? So Doge posted this on their X account. USAID spends $40 billion plus of taxpayer dollars to fund foreign aid, including $45 million to DEI scholarships in Burma, $520 million for consultant-driven ESG investments in Africa, and $1.2 billion in awards to undisclosed recipients. So on Wednesday, the White House press secretary, Caroline, came out and also offered some more examples of what USAID has been spending taxpayer dollars on.
And that's what you see when you look at USAID. I know Secretary Rubio made some comments about how he will be acting as the director over that agency. And here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look. Because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you, guys.
I totally agree. If American citizens actually knew where every single dollar was going, especially when it comes to USAID, they would come to the conclusion that it's fraudulent. It's a front. It's corruption on the highest level. It's not being used the majority of the time for legitimate foreign aid. Now there are, and you can find certain programs within there that are legit and are actually doing great work. But that may only be 10% of it. Whereas the rest, the other 90%, it's fraud and abuse. And it's not even debatable. So instead of the Democratic Party focusing on the fraud, waste and abuse like President Trump and the rest of his administration is doing, they're focusing on attacking Elon Musk and calling him unintelligent.
This dude is probably one of the most unintelligent billionaires I have ever met or seen or witnessed. Which, you know, you can probably even glean that from watching these people on TV. Anyways, all of that is to say is that they don't do their homework. Clearly, like, they're putting 19-year-olds in at the Treasury. This dude is not smart. And the danger in the lack of intelligence and the lack of expertise that Elon has. I mean, this guy is one of the most morally vacant, but also just least knowledgeable about these systems that we really know of.
I wonder how many rockets she has sent up into space. But this continues to be the point, right? They make this extreme claim, he's going to hit a button and things are going to go sideways. And they always forget to mention that things have already gone sideways, right? It's like you can't break something if it's already broken. It's fraud and waste that's so bad, President Trump had to appoint Secretary of State Marco Rubio as the acting administrator of USAID. And here's what he had to say about what's going on.
They have basically evolved into an agency that believes that they're not even a U.S. government agency, that they are a global charity, that they take the taxpayer money and they spend it as a global charity, irrespective of whether it is in the national interest or not in the national interest. One of the most common complaints you will get if you go to embassies around the world from State Department officials and ambassadors and the like is USAID is not only not cooperative, they undermine the work that we're doing in that country. They are supporting programs that upset the host government for whom we're trying to work with on a broader scale and so forth. So we're going through it at the State Department portion of foreign aid. We find cooperation. State Department people have been great, and we're issuing waivers and we're getting input and it's working. We go to USAID, which is a big chunk of foreign aid, $40 billion or so. They're completely uncooperative. They won't tell you what the programs are. They refuse to answer questions. They try to push through payments. Even after the executive order, they were still trying to push money through the system.
Can it be reformed or does it need to die?
Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is, we don't work for anyone, we work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do. So the president made me the acting administrator. I've delegated that power to someone who's there full time, and we're going to go through the same process at USAID as we're going through now at the State Department. I think there are some, this is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do that makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department or is that better through something, a reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through. There are things that are happening at USAID that we should not be involved in funding, or that we have a lot of questions about, but they're completely uncooperative. So we had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why the Democratic Party and the pundits on the news and the left-wing media is continuing to try to distract you from what's really going on here. And how are they doing that? They're trying to tug on your heartstrings and give you the worst-case scenario and all of this. They don't want you to be focused on where the money is going. They want you to focus on what would happen, like if you cut funding on a legit program that was doing good and caused something bad to happen. And that might be true. But it's also true that there is massive frauds within this agency, and it needs to be addressed in some very extreme ways because they don't want to cooperate. Let me show you an example of how they're using this narrative to tug on your heartstrings. Here's Van Jones on CNN.
We can brag on Marco Rubio. I'd be happy to do it, but I'm going to tell you right now, people are going to die in very large numbers around the world who are expecting the United States to live up to our promises to get them medicine, to get them help. And when that happens, people are going to remember that. There are people right now who have HIV who are alive only because the United States is making sure of that. Donald Trump says, we don't care. You go die. That's the message from the United States government. It is the wrong message to be sending, and it opens up the door for China and other people say, at least we're a stable government who's not going to leave you out here to die. That's this is not an abstract conversation for people around the world.
That's not. No, Van, today Marco Rubio wrote congressional leaders to explain their moves on USAID and why they're moving it to the State Department.
No, he's specifically talking about HIV medication and PEPFAR.
Well, hold on just a second, though. The goal is to make sure the programs and the people administering them align with U.S. foreign policy goals.
Let's take Van Jones at his word. Let's say he's right about all of that. Then why have USAID been uncooperative and refused to turn over classified material to Elon Musk government inspection teams? So if you're doing good work and you're saving lives, wouldn't you turn over the documents to prove that is what you stand up for and what you believe? Wouldn't you provide the receipts to say that you're doing the right thing here? Or would you not do it because you know there's massive corruption? This is Scott Jennings providing more common sense on this debate.
Republican who worked in the White House for President Bush when PEPFAR was passed.
Yes.
I think it's one of the most successful things for American soft power we've ever done. I think George W. Bush may have saved more human lives than any other president. This is an example of a positive use of American soft power. But there is a difference between soft power and stupid spending. And there is a long list of things today, as the Congresswoman pointed out, that all Americans would regard as stupid and not in line with any U.S. interest. And let me say one more thing.
I'm not denying
the
that.
USAID bureaucracy.
You do it, Scott.
Yes, let me
Are you
finish.
going to just shut down a whole agency, or are you going to find the waste and stop it?
The USAID bureaucracy is not American soft power. It's the money and the strategic direction. Today, he put Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, our Chief Foreign Policy Officer, in charge of USAID. Soft power will not stop. But out-of-control bureaucracy will stop, and that will help us.
Bill Cassidy says that it's stopped.
The problem with Democrats and what the people who oppose what Elon Musk and Trump are doing in regard to this entire debate is that they're missing out on common sense. If you hand someone $50 billion and there are zero audits and no follow-up and no accountability, what do you think they're going to do with the money? They're going to waste it. It's human behavior. Now, they'll come and audit you and me because they want to know where we spent $600. They want to make sure that we pay our tax dollars, but they don't want us looking into the books of USAID and what it's doing. Now, you tell me if that makes sense. Now, let me show you the first protest. This is what Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who herself in her country that she comes from, has already received over $1 billion from USAID. But here's what she had to say.
I am exceptionally upset about USAID. I lived in a refugee camp for 4 years as a child surviving civil war. It is the essential programs that USAID provided that kept my family and I fed and safe. It is the resources that so many people around the world rely on. And it is our soft power. Oftentimes, people interact with our country through the military. That does not create love for us, and it certainly does not keep us safe. When the world interacts with Americans through programs that provide essential need, they get to see the heart and compassion of the American people. When someone is struggling because their bridge broke down, when USAID comes in and helps fix that bridge, that creates goodwill for the American people. When people are dying of malaria and there is medication through USAID, that creates goodwill for the American people. When people are fleeing and they need just a little bit of food and USAID is there to provide that, that creates goodwill for the American people.
There's two things. One, she's right. Some of the aid definitely helps people. I don't think anybody's disputing that. But according to the numbers, that only represents a minority of the $50 billion budget. So what's happening to the majority of our tax dollars? That's the issue here. Now, this is why some people believe that the agency should just be shut down and a new one start. That way, we know for a fact that the money has been spent in the way that we want it to. But remember, what I said at the beginning of the video, the Democratic playbook is to focus on your emotions, which is exactly what Congressman Chris Murphy did when he also gave a speech during that protest.
Elon Musk has been floating all sorts of awful, terrible conspiracy theories about what happens at USAID. Let's make it very clear that every single day, America is safer because of what happens at USAID. USAID fights terrorist groups all across this world, making sure that we address the underlying causes for a retreat to terrorism. USAID chases China all around the world, making sure that China doesn't monopolize contracts for critical minerals and port infrastructure all around the world. It supports freedom fighters everywhere in this world. Up until yesterday, delivering firewood, for instance, to the brave Ukrainian defenders on the Eastern Front.
So if USAID, okay, let's take what he's saying as a fact. That means they've been failing. Because last time we checked, China has control of the Panama Canal, which is what caused President Trump to do what he did in order to get the president of Panama to rip up that contract between them and China. So explain that one, Congressman Murphy. And of course, now you have Bill Gates making his rounds on the news to defend USAID. And if that's happening, I think that tells you everything you need to know.
A lot of private sector people, when they get into government, they don't take the time necessarily to see what the good work is or why it's structured the way it is. So I'm a little worried, particularly with this USAID stuff. My foundation partners with USAID on nutrition and getting vaccines out. And, there's incredible people. They're not actually worms that work there. So, hopefully we'll get some of that work back in shape. In fact, if we don't, you could have literally millions of deaths. So, with aid, people think, wow, how much do we give to these countries? As you said, it's less than 1%. People think it's 5% and it should be 2%, but it's actually under 1%.
Wow. And still saving lives.
Well, my reaction to this is very simple. One, it's in Bill Gates' financial interest to make sure that USAID is continuing to move forward. He pretty much said that out loud in that clip. Number two, we've already talked about it throughout this video. we know two things could be true at the same time, that there are good programs within USAID. And Marco Rubio said, hey, we're not going to scrap the whole thing. We need to reform it because the majority of it is fraud, waste, and abuse. Which brings me to number 3. The American people don't care to hear what Bill Gates has to say. They don't care about the Democratic Party has to say anymore because Joe Biden did everyone a favor. He proved that the Democratic Party has been lying up and down about everything to this point. Show us what the numbers are saying, and then we'll make a determination about what should happen moving forward. It's exactly what President Trump is doing.
The biggest freak out on the left now seems to be about USAID. The Democrats, I'll go through examples. Senator Eric Schmidt put out $20 million on a Sesame Street show in Iraq. $56 million to boost Egyptian, Tunisian tourism, $40 million to build schools in Jordan. We'll tell more people about it more. Why would we be spending hard-earned American taxpayer dollars on items like that and more?
Because Washington, D.C. for far too long has been run by corrupt government bureaucrats who do not care about hard-earned tax dollars that the American people are working for every single day. And finally, it took President Trump and Elon Musk, who is serving as a great friend and ally to the president, to start digging through the books of this bloated bureaucracy here in Washington. And the waste, the fraud, the abuse is alarming.
Well, she's spot on. But here's a question that the media continues to ask President Trump, is who gave Elon the authority to do this? Who is Elon Musk to get access to do this? All they do is question everything that Trump is doing, including Elon Musk. And you know what they're not doing? Questioning what happened to all the American tax-paying dollars. They don't want to talk about it for some reason, but here's President Trump responding to that very question.
Well, he's got access only to letting people go that he thinks are no good if we agree with him, and it's only if we agree with him. He's a very talented guy from the standpoint of management and costs, and we put him in charge of seeing what he can do with certain groups and certain numbers. Some of the numbers are horrible, what he's found. Think of it, $100 million on condoms to Hamas, and many other things that are frankly even more ridiculous. And they're finding tremendous waste, really waste more than anything else, I think you could say. Probably fraud and abuse can be added to it, the more standard waste, fraud and abuse. But they're finding tremendous amounts of really bad things, bad spending. You've been writing about some of it, frankly, and some of the things that they've been doing is just terrible. Elon can't do and won't do anything without our approval, and we'll give him the approval where appropriate. Where not appropriate, we won't. But he reports in, and it's something that he feels very strongly about, and I'm impressed because he's running, obviously, a big company. It has nothing to do, if there's a conflict, that we won't let him get near it. But he does have a good natural instinct. He's got a team of very talented people. We're trying to shrink government, and he can probably shrink it as well as anybody else, if not better. Where we think there's a conflict or there's a problem, we won't let him go near it.
All right, so given everything we've covered in this video, where are you on this issue? Do you believe that President Trump, given the authority to Elon Musk to see where every dollar is going of taxpayer money, is the wrong thing to do? Do you believe that this feeds into the idea that we have reached the point of oligarchy and billionaires are seizing control of the federal government? Or are you the person that says this is exactly what is needed because the federal government has so long been addicted to fraud, waste, and abuse? Leave a comment in the section below, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel.